Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Madeline Key, and I've been interviewing inventors for more than 15 years. Today, I write about the innovation ecosystem for Forbes. Before I introduce our esteemed guest, Inventor John Moore, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Quaeris. Quaeris uses generative AI to answer questions that are asked in natural language like everyday English. It's beautifully designed and intuitive software that doesn't need analysts or developers to implement. The company was founded in 2020 and is headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. It takes a lot of hard work to make something simple. Along with our main sponsor, this event is brought to you by IDiyas, the Inventor and Patent Insight platform at www.idiyas.com, a site built by inventors themselves, along with help from both young developers and STEM students. IDiyas believes in giving back by mentoring students into innovation paths of their own. If you haven't visited the IDiyas website yet, please do. John, we're thrilled to have you here with us.
Thanks.
John Albert Moore is a prolific inventor living in Austin, Texas. From authentication technologies to sales efficiency strategies, his ingenuity knows no bounds. Today, he is the Director of Identity and Access Management at Kyndryl, the largest provider of IT infrastructure services. During John's lengthy career at IBM, he became a master inventor with more than 200 patents to his name. He uses the same skills to manage very complex projects at a global scale today. Whether he's improving the delivery of medications or monitoring how information flows in industrial settings, his motivation is the same: to make the world a better and more accessible place for all of us. He very much shares the IDiyas mission of mentoring the next generation. John, thank you again for being with us here today. I'm going to share a few housekeeping details, and then we'll get our interview underway.
Okay.
I know many of you prefer to leave your IDiyas screensaver on with your cameras off, but part of the fun engagement of this YouGo platform is seeing your faces. So we would love it if you turned on your camera. Please feel free to. We'd also love to know where you're attending from. Please write into the chat box, which you actually need to click to open at the top of your screen on the right-hand side. I've prepared questions for John. We'd also love to hear your questions, so please share them in the chat box. We won't be able to get to every question, but we will do our best. Okay, John, thanks for bearing with me through all of that. Now we get to the good part.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask what I think is kind of an obvious, interesting question. You've invented such a wide range of technologies. What inspires you to invent, and do your inventions have anything in common?
Ooh, those are good. I'm going to start with the latter question. Do they have anything in common? I'm going to say 95% of them, absolutely. It's something that I either experienced or heard about from somebody else that I thought there needed to be some improvements made on. So hey, I tried this, or I was driving down the road and this happened. What can we do to make that experience better? So the common theme is they're all problems that I think could be made better through an invention of some sort. In the former question, refresh my memory.
Yeah, I'm saying what inspires you to invent?
Oh.
I mean, are these inventions that have come, from exactly what you were doing during your day-to-day job at IBM, or how did they arrive?
Yeah, so some of them did come from my day-to-day job at IBM, and I was grateful for those. At a time, I was managing data centers for IBM. I came up with several patents on cable identification. Anybody who's ever been in a data center and looked under a raised floor, there's about 1 million miles worth of Ethernet cable hidden underneath there. And all of a sudden, one computer quits, and you've got to try and figure out which router it connects to or whatever. And I invented some ways that you could determine where those were. So that was kind of fun as part of my day job. But the other stuff actually happened in just practical real life. The very first invention that I ever did was I lived in Connecticut and made the commute to New York every day. And as I made that trip up 685, 684, and then made the connection on to the interstate to go into Connecticut, this was early 90s, so please don't judge me. But I would call my wife on the way home from work on the cell phone, you know, hands-free wasn't required back then, and say what was going on, find out what's going on. And as I approached the New York Connecticut border, I could count down 3, 2, 1, and the cell call would drop. And I thought, there's got to be a better way, you know, because I have to then wait till I get connectivity, and then I have to key in her phone number again or choose her speed dial and get reconnected. And so my first patent was very simply just a way to ease the pain for anybody who has dropped calls.
I love that. In my experience, inventors are motivated often by problems they encounter in their own lives. And it's that empathy for other people, thinking, hey, I want this to be better for myself. Other people might too. And I think that that's a really, that's part of the reason I perceive inventors to be such great leaders, is that they're thinking about other people. I have noticed, based on your profile on the IDiyas website, which again, I encourage people to check out, that you have a high inventor attribution rate number. Basically what I'm getting at is, do you prefer to invent alone, or do you actually invent with other inventors? What has happened over your career?
I have only gone and tried to do a patent or done a patent on my own maybe 5 or 6 times. It's so much more fun with friends. And so what I do is I find a couple of other people, and there's some who we gel very, very well. We're diverse enough that we think differently, but we think alike in some and on the other side of the coin. So it's more fun that way, because I describe when I do STEM engineering week talks in schools and stuff as the invention cycle is a cyclone, and you have to get it jump started. And if you can get it jump started with another couple of inventors or something, it just accelerates. There was one time we were talking about voicemail systems, and what we thought, this is silly, you know, phone tag back and forth. I'm calling you, you're leaving a message at the same time on my phone mail, and I'm leaving it at you, and that kind of stuff. And then applied that to business. And the 3 other co-inventors that I was working with that I had a great time with previously, we ended up spinning 12 different patents off of that one idea, you know, of improving you know, voicemail and how voice connects and that kind of stuff. So it's so much more fun with other people. So much more fun.
I love that. If you, in your day-to-day at Kyndryl, you know, maybe had an idea for an invention or were working on someone, would you go and seek out colleagues to partner on that? Or what does that look like in your day-to-day now at Kyndryl? Are you inventing and patenting still?
Yes. So I can say now, since in the last couple of weeks, that yes, I am back inventing. So because Kyndryl spun off and we're not quite 2 years old, I've had to stand up. It's basically the world's largest startup with over 100,000 employees. And we're having to build out all the identity systems and access management solutions and everything else. And so I haven't been afforded that opportunity. To about a week and a half ago, I came up with an idea. I reached out to somebody that I've not actually done any business with. I just heard him say at one point in time, I think I'd like to become an inventor. And so I reached out to him and said, I got an idea. Would you like to participate? And he's all in. And we're hopefully going to be getting into the actual write-up submission phase here in the coming, well, about December timeframe.
That is very, very cool to hear. And it makes me think of something that I've experienced when I've interviewed inventors is many people actually need to be called an inventor by someone else or have it pointed out to them that that's what they're doing. Do you remember when you began thinking of yourself as an inventor? And did you know, as a young person that you wanted to make problem solving your career? Is this something you stumbled into?
I think it's more something I stumbled into. So when I was a teenager, I did Boy Scouts. I'm an Eagle Scout, and there was a merit badge for the inventing, patent merit badge. And I'm like, oh, how cool would that be? Have a patent. And then I did nothing with it. Went on, did a bunch of other stuff. Went to school. Got hired at IBM, and I was at IBM for several years. And a good friend of mine, he said, "You sure seem to have a unique way of solving problems." That people don't. He said, have you ever thought about inventing something? And I'm like, oh no, I don't have that skill. No, that's not me. I can solve problems because I work on cars and I do all these other things, but no, not me. And he's like, well, that problem you described to me earlier, how would you solve it? And so I described it to him on how to solve it, which was that cell phone example. And he said, why don't you invent it? Why don't you patent it? And so he
Mm,
coached me through the process of getting my idea, doing the prior art searching, writing it up, getting it reviewed with an attorney, getting it submitted, and went on. And that was just a real revelation. But at that point, I still didn't consider myself an inventor. Um, I myself thought, lucky fluke. So then we did a couple
mm,
more, and within about 8 months, I had submitted 12 ideas to the USPTO, and at that point in time, IBM came to me and said, "Oh, we recognize you're a prolific inventor."
mm,
And wow, I'm being recognized by my own company as an inventor, and that's when it kind of clicked. I
mm.
wasn't seeking it. I didn't know about it. I just for me, I stumbled into it, but it was a good mentor who identified the potential.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And from speaking with you, that's something you're very active in doing now, is outstretching that hand to say, hey, I see something in you, or I'm sensing this potential. What is your advice for young people who want to be involved in inventing, patenting, but aren't sure how to get started, maybe don't know where that mentor is? Do you have ideas of where they should look, or should they reach out to an inventor like you? What's a good path?
Well, okay, so yes, all of the above. I would say if you're even remotely interested as a young inventor or you're young at heart, the best thing you could do is find somebody who's a mentor that kind of understands the process. Um, so I'm blessed to know Josh Pelt, who's part of IDiyas, kind of the owner, leader, founder, and he, through some business dealings, found out that I was an inventor. But when IDiyas was younger,
Yes.
reached out and talked to me, and it made me aware that people even outside my company and outside of what I do at STEM, that there were opportunities, that other inventors like me, and I guess we're all like each other.
Hmm.
We're all eager to help. At IBM, one of the things I prided myself was I helped over 120 people get their first patent. I
Mm,
was their coach, I was their mentor, worked them through it. One of my interns that I hired during a summer, I helped her get a patent as a result. When I do STEM and engineering, when I'm in that individual school, I've made it known that if you really are excited about this or you're curious, work through your teacher to reach out to me, because I don't want, I want to be very careful with a parent child, a child stranger kind of situation, but
sure.
work through your school teacher to say, I know an inventor. I think you would, we can bring him in and we can talk to the class or we can do whatever. And I've had opportunities to do that, but finding somebody, the best place, I can't plug IDiyas enough.
Yes.
They have opened my eyes to all kinds of opportunity and people who are eager to share.
Right. I think most inventors are very willing to give back, particularly ones who have achieved a modicum of success, because it is hard to become an inventor and to persevere. And what I've experienced is that people have such positive feelings about their own experience as inventors that they want to pass that forward, that they want to help someone maybe avoid a few mistakes or just overcome that doubt that's saying, I'm not really an inventor, or who do I think I am to do this? I'm seeing an interesting question from Corey Smith in the chat. So I want to use it as an opportunity to explain a little bit about the uniqueness at IBM. He's asking, do you know how many have been profitable or at least have paid for themselves? I think it may be a different way of asking that would be, do you know how many are being used commercially? And I think something that's worth pointing out is for many years, IBM wanted to have the most patents filed in the world. And they did a remarkable job of nurturing and supporting inventors like John to say, we'll help you by paying for that patent application to be filed. So that's a very different perspective than, say, an independent inventor. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. I am not an independent inventor. When I signed in with IBM, one of the things that I signed, and many large corporations do this, they own the intellectual capital that you produce. So
Right.
unfortunately, I don't own any of those 200 patents or so. I have one that's mine. The other 200, they're owned by IBM, but I am listed as the inventor or a co-inventor. I don't know how many of them are actually in use, but I do know at IBM they had a program, and I've been gone from them for a couple of years, but they had a program where you got a little extra money on the side depending upon whether it was high value and if it was being profitable and used. And there are tricks inventors will use to determine in those kinds of scenarios if the patent's
Mm,
in use. If the company continues to renew the patent, to stretch it out
mm,
to the full 20 years, oftentimes they'll do 4 or 5 years and they're like, we're just
good
not going to
point.
renew this when we're not generating revenue. So I do have one in particular that has generated in the excessive of tens of millions in revenue for IBM. At least that's what
Nice.
was shared with me. They wouldn't give me a real number, but it
Sure.
was very nice to hear that one. And it's something that a lot of people use. Anytime you go to a web page and it asks you if you want to chat with an agent, I'm me and a buddy of mine, we came up with the idea and then also how to do all the load balancing behind it through sentiment analysis. So to determine if the
Wow.
person's happy versus really angry. If somebody's really angry and they're yelling at you and using negative tone, you probably
Right.
couldn't deal with a second person in a chat at the same time because many chat agents will be running multiple. So so
Ah,
so um so that's probably the one that I'm guessing has generated the big revenue for IBM.
oh, that's fascinating. I feel like that exists on most web pages these days. Um, this is a great segue into my next question, which is, as an inventor, what do you want to be known and remembered for? Maybe put another way, what are you most proud of inventing and developing?
In actual invention or just concept?
Both.
Both. Wow. I think the thing that I'm the most proud of inventing stems from inventing something as a result of a friend of mine. I had a friend who lost a loved one in an accident. He worked on top of the big wind turbines and he ended up falling, hitting his head and hanging upside down. He hit his head enough that he had a cut, and we all know head wounds tend to bleed a lot. He bled out and they found him the next day hanging upside down on a wind turbine. And so one of the inventions that we have is in the spirit of honoring and remembering him was a system that can detect that a person has made a fall and right size them so that their head is in an upright position and automatically phone home the office, give them which tower they're on, the conditions, try to reach the individual, etc. It's a lot broader than that. We apply it to more than just, we applied it to bridges and to sky rises and to other kinds of things where someone might be
Cool.
in. So it's a harness and mechanism that does that. So I think I'm the most proud of that one. I don't know that anybody's implemented it. I don't know that anybody's made any money on it. Obviously it's not IBM's core business, but
Sure.
I'm proud of that one because of the impact that it might have on the next person who could have been in that situation. But in principle, for me, I think you described it early in the interview. I'm really passionate about making things better for humankind. Anything, whether it's inventing, help being a co-inventor on adaptive cruise control in automobiles, so that you don't have to keep tapping the brake and then hitting a reset, or integrating your travel with traffic lights to help you find the most optimal way to get home so you don't have to stop and slow down, or some accessibility kinds of things. Uh, there's the medicine, detecting
Yeah.
whether somebody's taking the proper dosage, the right amount of dosage, medications in rest homes, or alerting if somebody's taken more than they should have, those kinds of things. That I'm most excited about the impact that these inventions will have on other people's lives and even the money that comes from it.
Absolutely. There's also the reality that when that next inventor comes and they're studying the prior art and they're trying to make an even better invention, they're able to look and study at what you've done, and it's contributing to this body of work that's really history as well. Um, on LinkedIn, a colleague described you as having an amazing ability to manage very complex projects at global scale. I'm fascinated by this. How did you learn to do this? What skills do you use? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the skills started when I was 4. So my parents have this picture that I'm very fond of. I am underneath the hood of my parents' Ford Maverick, 1968 Ford Maverick, and I'm replacing an alternator at the age of 4. My dad grew up, my dad was in the military, and he started out as a pararescue jumper, a PJ in the Air Force, and then went on to working on helicopters, and then a crew chief, and until he was medically until a medical condition took him out of the military. But he instilled that curiosity of love of automobiles, and I figured out by the age 8 I'd rebuilt my first engine without any assistance, and it ran and it worked. And to be able to take a complex thing and just break it into its individual components, understand how it works together. That has been the thing that has propelled me through my career. I like the illustration in movies where whether it's Iron Man, I don't remember which Marvel movie it is, but they're working on something on their hands and they do this and it explodes into 70 pieces up above, and you can see how they all interact and then they pull it back together. I don't have that visual that actually happens in my head, but that concept actually happens. I see this object and okay, how does it work, and break it down. I mean, my mom was really furious when she came home one time and I had a transmission disassembled in the bathtub. Or the TV didn't work because I took it apart,
Yeah.
not knowing how dangerous vacuum tubes were at that point in time. I'm lucky to still be alive, but it's really the ability to look at a complex problem or complex item and break it into smaller pieces, and that's how the big projects that I've done, the enterprise transformation projects that take billions of dollars of expense, operating expense out, comes is figuring out what are the individual components, see how they work together, and apply some sort of methodology to connecting them together and removing the excess, much like people who are process black belts.
Fascinating. It sounds like to me that you've been curious for a long time. You have a desire to, like, that belief that you can break apart things into their smaller composite, but also being inquisitive about them, of what are those smaller parts and how do they fit together. I think if you're not a curious person, then maybe you're not going to ask those questions or dig deep enough to find out how to put things together in a different way. I am curious if there are any misconceptions about patenting, maybe in the public, maybe in friends or family, that you wish you could clear up.
Okay. Yeah. For me, I think it would be that patenting or coming up with a novel idea is really difficult. That's the biggest myth that's out there. If someone such as myself could come up with 200 plus that have been issued, 200 plus that are still patent pending, in a 15-year period of time, with my background, it's easy for anybody else to be able to do it. I think it's knowing how to find someone who can help you, walk you through the process. To be honest, is the most difficult thing. The other myths that are out there is we're all, and I don't want to use this as a negative term because it's a term of endearment in my house. That all inventors have to be geeks or nerds or Einsteins with a near 200 IQ. No,
Right.
that's not us. If you see some of the guys that I do or gals that I've done inventing with, I've got one who is just an avid fisherman, and he is about as country comes. But he looks at things differently. He was one of the bigger idea generators with a couple of people that I invented with. He would say, "Hey, okay, I got a problem. I'm driving down the road. The wheel bearing went out in my trailer. What could we do to prevent my wheel bearing from going out or causing me to be broke on the side of the road?" Well, guess what? I've got 5 ideas for you right now, and we would just shout them out and start figuring out how that worked, and then apply it to a broader spectrum of use cases versus just trailer bearing sensors or something of that nature. So we're not all geeks, we're not all nerds, but what I will say is when you are co-inventing with somebody, it's a special bond. It's a pretty unique experience. That intern, I don't work with that intern at all anymore, but I'll always have a special place for her, and what we were able to achieve together.
I love that. For those of you who haven't checked out the IDiyas site yet, another thing that you can explore is the relationship that inventors have between each other. And so you can see when inventors are working in different companies or across different industries, and delve into those relationships, because I think you're absolutely right. What I notice about inventors is this willingness to try and go forward against what many other people would say, oh, why bother? Does anyone care? There's just a lot of pessimism. There's this optimism for the future and humanity that inventors have that motivate them to do the work that they do. And that's not limited to any one type of person. That's can be within all of us. We're getting towards the last few minutes here. If anyone else has a question for John, now would be an excellent time to write it into the chat. Now would also be a great time to share your appreciation for John. Let's see if we have any more questions come in. Edgar asks, where do you think AI will take us in this next decade?
Wow. AI has a lot of potential. I hope I'm not going to be too controversial here. There are two camps in the AI space at the moment. Those that say we should continue to proceed, but we need to do so with a little bit of caution. And there are those that are saying, let's just lean into it and run as fast as we can. And I agree with both camps, unfortunately. We have to lean in, because if we don't lean in and we try and figure out how to use it for good and use it to prevent the bad, someone is going to invest the time to figure out how to use it for the bad. And then we're in a constant catch-up game. So we have to lean in that way. But I also think that we need to consider how to do it responsibly, because I am concerned. I hear of people that I work with, or or in the community. I'll be at the swimming pool and I'll hear about these kids. Yeah, I cheated on my test. Chat GTP right there on the phone. I could dump the stuff in, get the answers. It's great that they're resourceful in figuring that out, but I'm concerned that they're not learning some of the principles that really they're going to need to be successful. So that's kind of what I think. But I think the reason why I'm still staying in cybersecurity, I've only been in the cybersecurity realm this go around the last 7 years, is I think that that's going to be one of the scarier vectors that AI is going to take advantage of. I attended RSA earlier this year in a presentation and watched ChatGTP argue with itself once, in one stage where they said, you AI chat one cannot break character. You're a human, you're a this or a that, and I'll call you out on it. And then the two of them just kind of went at each other back and forth. And it was just mind blowing to see that. But they're going to use that to figure out with quantum computing. That's another really hot area. I would tell people, if you've got the mind to figure out how to patent in quantum computing, that's an area you could make a lot of money. But with the raw horsepower of quantum computing with AI, I'm afraid that nobody's going to be safe who still uses passwords for anything. We have to move to a passwordless society where it's tied more to secondary factors of things that you may have, whether it's specifically a hardware token, a biometric of some sort that's much harder. But for me, that's where I'm keeping my eye, particularly on AI, and trying to think of what I can invent in that area. A colleague of mine is the person who invented reCAPTCHA, pick the pictures and stuff, and that was his way of saying, I got to figure out how to make these things more, so we can prevent robots from, submitting ideas and or credentials and things. So that's where I think on the AI question of where we're headed and what we need to watch.
Fascinating. I think all of us would kind of, on a positive note, would prefer to envision a world in which passwords are no longer required to spend our time on the internet safely. And yet it's also quite disturbing to imagine some negative scenarios as well. I believe that's all we have time for today, everyone. John, thank you again. If you've not shared your appreciation for John in the chat, I really encourage you to. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for the second interview in the new IDiyas series. Please, we'd love to hear what you think of our conversation. You can provide feedback to me directly by connecting on LinkedIn. You can also email ideas@support@idiyas.com. Please tell us who you'd like to meet next, who you want to learn from. We'd really love to know. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.